Okay, let's do some of the questions. So I had one come through. I'm going to read this one to you. It's an email. I'm not going to read any of the names when I do any of these. Just some people have left their names, but just I'm going to not put them in. Hi Josh, myself, my mother, and my sibling fled domestic violence when I was a child. I always thought my father was the bad parent and my mother was the good parent. When I was 12 years old, my mother was left pregnant and I helped her raise my severely autistic half sister. Our family did little to help, but I was there, so I had this. So, but I was there, so I have an adult response. I had adult responsibilities placed on me by as my mother couldn't cope. My default role is fixer. Yeah, we can all relate to that, right? And my default position is not to speak out, or it will make a bad situation worse. I get that really links actually to what I was saying earlier about the appeasing, right? I would go to school and be bullied, then come home to an unhappy home life. Well, my coping mechanisms were writing lyrics, listening to music, eating disorders, and self harm. It's really interesting as well, by the way, that this person says my coping mechanisms were writing lyrics, music, and then eating disorder and self harm as coping mechanisms. Like, we should really see these things as that, right? Rather than seeing them as some sort of malfunction in our fucking brain, that we should see them for what they are, which is coping mechanisms. It was only age 36 that I realized that my mother had also been verbally, emotionally, and occasionally physically abusive to me as a child, teenager, and put me in potentially risky situations with people she dated afterwards. It emotionally floored me. Not only that, but both my parents mistreated me, that it had taken me so long to realize this. I choose to have no contact with my mother a few years ago. I stopped contact with my abusive father decades ago. I had some therapy sessions last year to try and make sense of this as much as someone can. I wondered if you had come across many people that come from backgrounds where both parents are toxic, and if you had any advice for people who never had one supportive, loving parent. It has made me feel very alone and misunderstood many times in my life, as most people haven't experienced it. Good luck with the show. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Firstly, look, I guess to come to the question at the end, like, yes, I know regularly people that have both parents that are highly dysfunctional, toxic, however we might frame it. And I think it's devastating. It's devastating for children to grow up into their adulthood and to never have had that sense of love, unconditional love from either parent. Never had it. It's devastating. And again, never talked about. And if these people grow up struggling to love themselves, feeling depressed and anxious all of the time, we live in a world that's like, fucking hell, what's wrong with their brain? How do we find out? How do we diagnose them with something when it's like, whoa, hang on a minute, like, can we not see that when the brain was developing, all of this was going on? Like, this is not a problem in them. This is emotional wounding. And so I guess what I would say is that I resonate, firstly. I resonate with being a lone ranger. I resonate with feeling like you're alone in this world. I very regularly feel like I'm alone in this world. And so I just want to validate what that might feel like for you, that that's okay to be like that sometimes. But can you find community? Can you push yourself out of your comfort zone to find that, whatever that looks like? Wherever you find it, whether it's, I don't know, gym, some kind of club, online community spaces, because we need people. You can find family. Family doesn't have to be blood. You can find people out there. You can find mothering figures. You can find fathering figures. And look, I do think it's important always to look at both parents in the situation and understand the impacts that both of their actions had on you. Even if one is, we don't even necessarily, when we start breaking it down and looking at things closely, have to label both of them in either way, but we can start to see that your experience of both of them in some way has had negative impacts on you, and that makes sense. I think you are misunderstood. Let me say that as well. I think it's important. Like, we often feel, we say, I feel misunderstood. I think you are misunderstood. I think if you've grown up with parents like that, in that way, that didn't love you, or at least gave you a sense that they didn't love you. Whether, you could argue till the cows come home about whether they did or they didn't, right? But actually it's irrelevant, isn't it? If you experienced the sense that you weren't loved when you were a child, then that was the truth. That's what you experienced, irrespective of how we rationalize it now when we're adults. That rationalization can help, but we're still going to be left feeling misunderstood in some way. So the best thing I would say is to find community, and to let you know that I hear you, and recognize what an experience that must have been for you.